I've got my computer out here. This is part 2 of the oral exam. And in reading the first question here, the strongest parts of the story of Scripture for me were, um, I felt a lot more strong in the story of Scripture starting being actually in the Old Testament. I probably was strongest from Genesis, and really after that I start to summarize things up a little bit, or I start to go quick and leave a few things out. When I went back and watched this video of my telling of the story, I spent some time in Genesis, spent time with Abraham, spent time with Joseph, went into Exodus, and then I started to hit the train and get a little bit quicker. So yeah, my wheelhouse is more of Genesis through Exodus, and that's the stronger parts that I thought. I think that's stronger because I've spent a lot of time there. I've spent a lot of time reading those stories over. I love the richness of that narrative, and I tend to work out of that in Bible study. I tend to enjoy preaching and teaching on that. And I think some of the other parts I don't spend as much time as I should, though I probably some of the richest texts that I love is 1st and 2nd Samuel as well in the Old Testament. I don't stick there as much as I do earlier portions. The part of the story of Scripture that I need to work on are a lot of it. Really, it just seems kind of overwhelming when I get to the point of the crumbling of the kingdom. There's so much going on, so many years and so many different kings, that I can summarize it well. I don't think that I could do a better job of going in depth there. I also think that I probably could have worked on the New Testament more. By the time I found, anyways, when I go through the story of Scripture, by the time that I have somehow made it through the Old Testament, doing a summary, and I get to the Old Testament, and I get to the New Testament, I'm out of wind, and I summarize Christ really quick. I don't spend a whole lot of time on him, and that's not a good thing. I feel like you could spend quite a bit of time starting with Christ and his fulfillment of the covenants, God's plan in leading this promise through him, and then I jump to the church really quick and jump to the resurrection. Now, given there's a whole lot less time going on in the New Testament than there is in the Old Testament, but I felt like pretty much everything after my strengths needed to be worked on a little bit more for summarization, but it might take me more like 50 minutes to do that comfortably in explaining. This is why I think so. Let's see here. So I think I just told you why I feel like more or less it's daunting, but it's a kind of an overwhelming task, not daunting, overwhelming task when I get to the crumbling of the kingdom, and that I'm out of steam by the time I get to the New Testament. And the story of Scripture that I just told differs from the story of Scripture I would have told on the first day of class in these ways. I think that on the first day of class, I still was having a hard time systematizing how these books fall together in a way that's simpler for me to understand. When I watched the videos and saw that at the beginning 5:12, 5:5:12, when I was able to finally put those together and see that the last two 5s and 12 all fit within the first 12, it really helped me to calm down. I felt more organized. I felt like I had a better understanding of the story, that it's not a whole bunch of rabbit trails going on, that God's working through, but that there's a cohesiveness to them, and that there's an overarching narrative that's continuing through the years of God working for his people and upholding his promise. And I think if I would have told this at the beginning, I just would have been a lot more scattered. I wouldn't have been able to feel calm in working through that, even though I had to summarize for this overview story and need a whole lot of work on that still. It would have been a lot worse, and it would have been a lot more of me tripping over my words had I done this at the very beginning. Well, I enjoy this. I just read what I was supposed to talk about. I'd say this helps me a lot. I have I have summarized this countless times with my youth now. I try to tell them at least one in every 6 teachings. I try to summarize the story as best I can. I don't do it in this amount of time. I do it a lot quicker in about 5 or 10 minutes. Usually at the end of a lesson, just trying to help them to understand over and over that this is a story we can understand. It's not past their ability to grasp. And from this class, I grasped a whole lot more detail and how I can do that. And I'm really going to have to just continue working on it to perfect it. I'm not anywhere close, but I am hopeful that I can get there in the future. So thank you for teaching this class and teaching me and helping me to become better at my witness through the story of the Bible.